Welcome everyone, this is Viking, and today we're going to take a look at navigating with the ABRIS. But before we dive right into that, I want to cover a couple of things that I should have mentioned in the last video with the PVI 800. The first is that your waypoint in the PVI 800, it is indicated on your heading tape, but if the waypoint marker is all the way off to the edge, you're not going to know how far you need to turn in order to get to it. And your HSI will display that information with this little yellow symbol here. If we were to switch it to airfield 1, it'd flip it over there, and that's the direction we would go in order to get to our airfield. As you can tell, it also puts in the distance. It takes a little while to dial down to the correct number, but 3 kilometers away to the center of the airfield we're currently at. We'll go back to waypoint 1, and it'll go up to about, I think, 16 kilometers or somewhere in that neighborhood. So, that is something worth knowing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that if you have to, you can find an NDB, navigation beacon, radio navigation beacon, using your HSI. Now, the bad news is that in order to dial in the NDB's frequency, you have to use your main radio, which is probably going to take you off comms in a multiplayer scenario, but in single player it makes very little difference. So, if you have to do it, first you dial in the frequency on the main radio here, and I happen to know that there's one nearby at 113.6, and we should hear the Morse code. There it is. And then this thin needle on the HSI will point towards it if we flip the switch up to ADF. Now, the needle at one end has these little protrusions, and it tapers very gradually to a point. That's the direction of the NDB. Fly towards that if you want to actually go to the NDB. The other end of the needle is obviously the reciprocal heading. It does not have those little pointed protrusions, and instead of tapering gradually to a point, it tapers abruptly to a point. It's pretty difficult to tell the difference when you're already all the way zoomed out, but if you get right in there, it's not that hard to see which is which. And that is what I meant to put into the last lesson, but wasn't willing to redo the whole thing to rectify, so I'm just adding it in here. And back to 124 for general comms. Okay, let's take a look at the ABRIS. Now, the first thing that's worth mentioning, and I believe I covered this earlier, but it bears repeating, is that you can change the units that the ABRIS displays. The PVI 800 takes coordinates in degrees, minutes, and decimal minutes. Currently, we have it set to degrees, minutes, and seconds, so that's the default. So change it, down, change it, and now we've got decimal minutes as the ABRIS coordinate system. We can express speed in kilometers per hour, knots, or meters per second. Knots is very useful if you're escorting a Huey because their only speed readout is in knots. And if you're used to talking to jets that communicate in nautical miles, we have kilometers available, the usual metric one. We also have American miles, which you should never ever use because it's not useful to other jets, except maybe like World War II fighters that talk about miles per hour instead of knots. And then Mike is nautical miles. I realize it should say November Mike, that would make more sense, but it doesn't, so there you have it. You can also have the altitude displayed in meters or feet, and you can have weight in kilograms or pounds. I'm going to leave it on knots and nautical miles and feet for now, just so we can see that on the display when we use it. And the next thing that you'll want to know about the ABRIS, if you're editing a flight plan, is you always want to save the flight plan that you start with in case you need to get it back. The way we do that is from the main menu page here. We go Plan, Select, use the scroll wheel to go to Save, right-click the button, and then you give it a name. Any name is fine. I'm going to change this one to 1A just to illustrate how it's done. You can scroll with this wheel to 1, there we go, and then advance the character, and you can scroll with it as we just saw, but you can also click these buttons to step discreetly through the different characters. 1A sounds like a good name for this flight plan, so we'll hit save. And now that we've saved that, if we screw up, we can get it back. That's important. Alright, let's start by drawing a completely new flight plan from scratch. The way we do that is select, and then unload, right-click, boom, flight plan's gone. Then we go draw, and we can move the cursor around by scrolling this wheel, and then we right-click it to change between north-south and east-west. So let's put a waypoint over at the river bend here. And if we want to be precise about it, we can zoom in. Maybe we want it to be just right on the shore there. And then we say add. You can call it whatever you want, but for expediency's sake, I'm just going to leave it at 001. So enter. And now we have created that first waypoint. Then we can go edit, insert, and make another one. If you adjust the zoom level, it will center it. And we'll say put that there, say add, that's waypoint 2, enter. And then we will, pardon me, we'll go insert. And maybe we'll put that one over here. Let's say we really want to put it like right in the clearing by the river. So we'll zoom right in and get it down nice and precise. If we need to tell other people where we're going, we can see the coordinate system here. It's not really convenient. Like if someone reads you coordinates, you don't really want to be scrolling around and trying to get precise coordinates that way. So I mean, you can. If someone says 1395, you can try and get there, and it's going to be all right. But really, if someone gives you numerical coordinates, you want to be using the PVI 800. If someone gives you geographical references, like just east of DD, whatever that says, then the ABRIS is your go-to tool. So we'll say add, and we got waypoint 3 in there. And enter, and then we'll do just one more to get us back home. Let's try and get us right back to the apron that we're currently hovering over. And add waypoint 4, enter, and we're done. But the thing is, this flight plan is not finalized. We can't actually use it. In order to use the flight plan that you've created, you have to hit plan and active. If you don't do that, screwy things will happen, and you'll be sad. So make sure that when you edit a flight plan, you always hit the active button. Now, let's say that we missed a waypoint. We want to add one in. No problem. Back to the main menu, plan, and we're going to go revise. Right-click the button, and now we can scroll through our various waypoints. Let's say we want to add a waypoint between 3 and 4. So 4 is up there, 3 is down here. We go edit, edit draw, is that right? Oh yeah, it's draw and then it's edit insert. That's a little bit counterintuitive. Now, we said we wanted to insert it after waypoint 3, so it puts the cursor up on waypoint 4. That's also a little counterintuitive, but rest assured, it actually is in between 3 and 4. Now, suppose we want to get it like right there. Okay, that's good. But when we say add, it calls it waypoint 5. Do you want waypoint 5 in between 3 and 4? I don't like that, so I always adjust the name in these circumstances. So we'll say, and then right click to advance the cursor. We'll call this waypoint 3A. And enter. And now we have our extra waypoint in here. Let's say we want to edit an existing waypoint. So we'll scroll down to waypoint 3. We'll go edit that waypoint. And it offers to let you change the name. Probably that's not what we were going for when we wanted to change it. So you hit the move button, and now you've got a cursor again. And we'll put it right, actually let's put it right over the island in the middle of the river there. Okay, enter, and now we have made that adjustment. And I actually think waypoint 2 is a little too far out of our way if we're going to fly this whole circuit, so we will go to waypoint 2 right there, and we'll go edit, and we'll go move, because we don't care to change its name. That's not what we're here to do. And let's say we want to put that one right over the fork in the river. And enter. And there we have it, a flight plan. But we always have to remember to go plan, activate. Otherwise it's not going to take. So if we hit, now basically the first waypoint is always the airfield that we take off from. So if we want to get to our first waypoint, which is labeled number 2, then we hit suspend, and it will take us, or point us to waypoint 2. Now, the desired heading to waypoint 2 is the yellow line. That's a heading of 208. But if you try to fly 208, it will take you off in this direction. This is the number we're looking at. We're looking at 194. If we come to a heading of 194 and fly for 3.3 nautical miles, then we will get there. So let's do that. Bring track IR back online. And away we go. What did I say it was? 194? Okay. Now, another thing worth mentioning is that if we cancel the waypoint on the PV800 and make that display go dark, the waypoint marker will be whichever direction we were facing when we last hit the trim button. So if I come this way and then trim it, it points that way. And if I take it back to 195, that way. And we're flying to the waypoint. We can see that geographically it's just at the fork in the river. We don't have an easy view of that river. I mean, we can see part of it down here, but I can't see where the fork is. So I'm going to zoom in there a little bit more so that I can glance down and see it. Now, ahead of getting there, I'm going to go ahead and hit suspend. And I see that my bearing will be approximately 115 by the time we get there. Probably like 112, actually, by the time we get there. But it gives me a rough idea of which way I'm going to turn when I reach the fork in the river. That I totally cannot see. Well, whatever, we're there. We need to go to heading 105. Away we go. Trim it, cancel flight director. And turn on altitude hold. Now it says here that we will arrive at this waypoint, given our current speed, at 7:28 and 25 seconds, or 1 minute and 10 seconds from now. We'll just let that happen, and after we make our next turn, we're going to take a moment to save the flight plan that we just created, because you can save more than one, and we might want to get it back. We are arriving at the waypoint in 25 seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and preemptively hit the sus button. And we're going to turn towards 023, 022. I accidentally left altitude hold on, which is what those bars were about. Trim it, and we're good. Actually, that may not be the best trim setting. Gotta bring it right a little bit. Cool. Alright. Now, we like this flight plan. This is a pretty cool flight plan. So we're gonna save it. We're gonna go back to the main menu. We're gonna go Plan, Select, Save, and I'm gonna call this one 2B. 2B. Alright, we could hit active again, but it would be redundant. However, doing that takes us right back here. We can go suspend until we're pointed at the right direction. Now, let's say that we screw up. Let's say that we wreck our flight plan and we'll pretend that we haven't saved it. So we'll go Plan, Select, Unload. Lost the flight plan. Don't even know how to get back to base. Well, we took off from Ka-50. So what we can do is we can go to from the nav menu. Actually, it just pulled our plan back up because we couldn't activate an empty plan. But let's pretend we lost our plan. Let's pretend we screwed it all up. We can go Search, Airport, and it orders it by the nearest. So Ka-50 is 4.5 miles away, 4.6 miles away. Senaki is 24 miles away. So we can then click the To button, and it will direct us to that waypoint. Now, maybe we're like it's a friendly airfield. We know this. We took off from there. But what if we don't know that? What if we're suspicious that it contains some hostiles? Let's say we think it might contain some Shilkas with a firing range of what is it, about 1.5 nautical miles? I can't remember exactly what it is for a Shilka. Let's say that we think the Shilka's range is 2 nautical miles, just to put a round number on it. All right, we're gonna come to a hover, and we're gonna get our bearings here because we've screwed up and we need to stop and think. Always remember to increase collective as you come to a hover because you never know. Or pardon me, because you will lose translational lift as you lose forward airspeed. So we're facing in about the right direction here. I actually did not add enough collective, but I had a lot of altitude to lose, so no harm done. I'm going to turn off flight director and just use trimmer control to get this thing into a hover. 1 kilometer per hour. Now we're drifting to the right. Going to try and correct. 3 kilometers per hour, 2 kilometers per hour. Good enough to activate auto hover. Alright. Now, suppose that we want to make sure we stay out of range of Ka-50. Now, I mean, we can get a distance to there, right here, 5.6 nautical miles. But if we want to measure something with the ABRIS, we can go to Map and ERBL. Now, ERBL always converts the map so that north is up. Normally, the map turns so that whichever direction you're facing is up. But with ERBL, it's always north-oriented. Now, we can draw a line here, and we do it basically the same way that we would draw waypoints. We can zoom in, and we can say, alright, if we want to get to that exact point, alright, our bearing to that is 247, so we point ourselves at 247 in order to get there. And the reciprocal heading is 067. You can probably do the 2 and 2 math in your head. In case you're not familiar with that, an easy way to get a reciprocal bearing is to subtract 2 if you can, otherwise add 2. So subtract 2 from the first column, and you get 0. And then if you subtract from the first, you add to the second. If you add to the first, you subtract from the second. And so we can subtract 2 from 247, the 200s, so that'd be 0. Then we add 2 to this one, that gives it a 6, 067, and vice versa. We cannot subtract 2 from the first one here, so we add it, it makes 2. We added the first one, so we have to subtract on the second, 247, and that's an easy way to add 180 degrees without going over 360. You can see here that the coordinate system is available, and so if you know that there's a target there, you can tell people where it is with coordinates, and if you want to measure, now this gives you the distance from your current point, right? But if you want to, you can hit the marker button, and then you can set a different point, and the mark coordinates are in the top line. They stay the same, and the ERB coordinates are the second line, and then you get a bearing from the marker to the ERB. ERB stands for estimated range and bearing. ERBL, estimated range and bearing line. And we can see that the distance between these 2 points is 0.46 nautical miles. The altitude of the mark point is 148 feet because we set our altitude display to feet. It would be nice if they put a unit in there, but they didn't. So sometimes we just have to remember that. Although it says altitude in feet over here. Wait a minute. Why is that changing? That's weird. That made me think that maybe I was climbing. I'm not sure what's up with that. But in any event, okay, so it does put knots and feet here, so so you can see that these are feet. We don't really know that this is nautical miles based on any other display that we can currently see, but we remember that we set it to nautical miles, so that's the unit we use. And so that's a convenient way of locating objects with respect to other objects. So that's the ERBL there. The ERBL doesn't do anything to your flight plan. You can just hit nav, and it'll go back to what it was. And so we can just fly towards that waypoint if we want, and then also, of course, we can go plan and select and load, and then we can pick our 2B plan, load it, and we're back in action. You may notice that there are I didn't hit active. Look at that. I didn't hit active and it screwed it all up again. Okay. So, the price for that is having to do it again. Select, load, to be load active. Yep, that's what you want. And yeah, I was about to say, you may notice that there's a black line alongside the blue lines. Blue lines are your waypoints, and the black line is the flight path that you actually traveled. So if you, like as you can see, we started off sort of off center from our from the airfield. We started off in that far parking lot. To the west, and so we got a black line leading out here, and then we did a wide turn coming this way. And so if you have to retrace your steps, or if you very specifically do not want to retrace your steps because you passed too near a threat and you don't want to do it again, the black line will help you. And that's about it for ABRIS navigation. While I'm up here, though, and while we fly back to base, for no particular reason, I'm going to include in the ABRIS lesson how to deal with fuel tanks if you have them. Right now, we are carrying a pair of drop tanks. They're on the inner pylons, and so we have the inner pylon fuel pump switch up, and we know that these tanks have gas in them because it says left-hand inner tank pump, right-hand inner tank pump. When those gas tanks are empty, these lights will go out. They will also go out if you flip that switch down. So if you're not getting fuel from your external tanks, if your actual fuel gauge is going down, then turn on the pumps. And if the pumps are on and the lights are out, then that means it's time to jettison the tanks. And you do that by hitting that button right there, external stores jettison. And when we see it externally, there we go, they just fall away. When that happens, you get a lot lighter all of a sudden, especially if there's still gas in the tank, which there was in this case. And so you're going to start climbing. If you don't want to climb, be sure to counteract that by dropping the collective a little bit when those tanks are away. And the airfield is in sight. So I'll just set us down in one of those, I can't remember what they're called, but those three-sided berms that surround a paved area. Now, in the Shark, it can go as fast as 300 kilometers per hour, but it takes longer to go from 300 kilometers per hour down to 200 than it does to go from 200 down to 100, and it takes longer to do that than it does to go from 100 down to 0. So feel free to approach the airfield quickly. I'm just going to put my gear down. But know that that if your speed is beneath 200, you'll have a much easier time stopping at the right time. Try not to cruise in at full speed unless you have a really good reason for doing that. It's a little hard to see the thing when it's under the nose. It's all right. Remember that you can descend as quickly as you want if you're going faster than 50 kilometers per hour, but we're about to go slower than that, which means we have to make sure that our rate of descent does not exceed 5 meters per second. I'm sure you know, but the rate of descent is here. We're currently descending at 1 meter per second. Don't let that needle dip below 5. Always be trimming. And we set her down gently. And then reset the trim. Set the wheel brake because we're done. And then if you really want to shut everything down kind of all at once, you can kill the batteries before you kill the engine. You can turn the batteries off because the engine turbines are providing AC power, and so turning off the battery doesn't have any effect. But the second you kill the engines, you lose everything in the bird. That warning light doesn't last long. It goes out right away because you just lose all electrical power immediately. Radios go out, everything goes out. And then once the rotors slow down to about this speed, then you can hit the rotor brake, and they will quickly come to a halt without burning out the rotor brake because they were going too fast. Oh, nice! The rotor's lined up. They don't usually do that. That looks very neat and tidy. And that is how to navigate with the ABRIS in the Black Shark. Thanks for watching. Cheers, everybody. See you next time.